Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today's project is another Penn reel, but it's a Penn spinning reel that you don't see too many of. This one is a made in Japan Powergraph, and it's the first of a series of reels that went away from the metal case and came back in with the graphite case or the plastic cases. It's a single ball bearing reel. Kind of took the place of the Penn Silver Series reels. Again, made in Japan. It's a single ball bearing reel. Nice big crank handle. 4,000 size is a entry-level inshore size. You'd go 30 and 40. Then if you need the bigger ones, you could go to the 50s and 60s sizes. This one takes 280 yards of 12-pound monofilament, or 15-pound monofilament would be about 200 yards. So it's got a nice range to it. It's got a nice wide spool compared to some of the 4000s. And we'll take it apart. We're going to show you how this reel is made, how it is serviced. And if you have any questions, you can always leave those questions in the comments section. So I'm going to start by removing the exterior pieces. In this case, I'm going to remove the button here to see if I have a screw-through handle or if I have a handle that is anchored into the main gear with a screw. And as it turns out, I have a screw-through handle. That means there's a bar coming completely through the main gear, held onto the back by this screw. So you want to always check that side piece there, see if you have a screw hanging there. Because if you try to unscrew this, assuming it was a screw handle and not a through handle, well, you go about wrecking some things. So while I take these exterior pieces and parts off, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel. That includes all uniformed services, fire, police, rescue, EMTs, everybody that's involved there, as well as our essential workers and all of the people involved in medical practices in the hospitals and the ERs and the long-term care and the like. You are our local hometown heroes during the pandemic, and we appreciate everything you do. Hang in there. We are going to beat this thing. I know it's stressful. I know I can only imagine what it is that you go through on a daily basis. And I thank you for everything it is that you're doing. All right, I'm removing the side case now. Now, while I was kind of thanking our local hometown heroes, I didn't get a chance to tell you, if you have a side case that ends underneath the rotor here, then this can come off first. If you do not see a seam here, but rather you see it going up under the rotor, then you need to pull the click ratchet and remove the rotor prior to completing your disassembly of the reel. I'm taking these screws out and I'm laying them on my bench. I leave them there because I want to make sure that all of those screws are the same size. If they're not the same size, I want to identify which one is longer or shorter and make sure that that goes back into the same position that it was when I took it off. In this case, all of those screws are the same, but I just finished a Shimano bait casting reel, a Bantam Corrado, and it had one screw that was longer. So it happens, and it happens more than you may think, so please check those out. Well, we have a single ball bearing. I'm going to assume the single ball bearing is on the pinion gear, and I'm going to assume we have bushings that are on both sides of the case. So let's go ahead and take one out, and there you go. We have a metal bushing. Bushings aren't bad. Some people like to change out those bushings where they can with bearings, and I'm not sure if it can be done on this reel or not. But a bushing is fine, and I prefer a metal bushing to a plastic bushing. If you do have bushings, that way they don't wear as much. I've seen a lot of plastic bushings become out of round, and then you get a kind of a wobble in the reel, and the only way you can correct that is by replacing it. All right, there's two screws here that are in the crosswind block. So if we can move that up a little bit. Those screws need to be removed so that you can pull the axle shaft. Again, I put them both on the table for a moment just to make sure that they're the same size. And then what we'll do now is we'll pull the axle shaft out. So this axle shaft came out very nice and easy. It's gone into the parts tray. My parts tray is the bottom of a jug, but it's a place where I can keep everything together. This is a good place to tell you to take pictures as you're taking the reel apart. That way you can see where the orientations are on the pieces For example, it'll probably be real easy to turn that crosswind block upside down. So note the positions, note the pieces, and as you take them apart, continue to take pictures at various points along the way. That way you won't have any problem as you go to rebuild your reel. All right, I've taken out the main gear. I've taken out the crosswind block. There's a crosswind gear in here. I'll take that out. I'll lay them on the table. So this is in nice condition. It's dry rather than overly greased. It has been serviced recently because I can see that there's blue grease in here and it hasn't had a chance to turn dirty or ugly or anything. So that's all good. It's been properly maintained. Folks ask me how frequently they should do the service on a reel, and my recommendation is to do it on an annual basis. Now this one has a little bit of gummed up grease in it, so it's a good time to show you that even though you may see some greases, blue like this one, because there's nothing really getting behind that gear, that other cases the grease does dirty with contamination inside, and you need to do a good job cleaning it up. That's really what annual services are about. It's about just inspecting the parts for wear, replacing those that have worn, cleaning up the old greases and oils, and refreshing that with new greases and oils. There's a tie-down screw that holds this nut onto the rotor, and then that's probably a 12 millimeter, and I have a deep 12 millimeter socket. This one's coming off in a counterclockwise or a traditional sense. And if you don't know clockwise, it means turn the nut towards you. Okay, that goes into my tray. We remove the rotor next. This has an old style dog, so there'll be ridges under the rotor here. And this dog is going to flip out to engage those ridges to stop the reel. While you have the rotor off, put a dot of oil into that slide bar there, which is going to be the trip. Oil the seams of the rotor. You don't need to take the bail off. And even though there's no ball bearing in the line guide, a drop of oil there never hurts. Just do a couple of quick flips on that just to make sure that it's moving smoothly. And put that aside. All right, so last part of the service then involves taking off the top end so that we can service the bearing that's in here, the one ball bearing. You want to note right away, there's a cavity. It's right here. That cavity is holding the eccentric spring. You can see that moving around. That's what's going to push this in and out and allow this to engage that wheel. So watch how this works. As the reel is reeling fine, you'll notice that the position of the spring is up top here, and that's pulling that dog in. As soon as you go to stop the reel, notice that the spring swings to the back end. Well, and it should push that dog out. Well, that's why, because the rotor will be holding it there. Okay. Let's go about disassembling this. We're going to take the collar with the spring on it. Notice that when we took that off, that angled part of the spring is in that cavity, so it faces down. And then we have two screws that are holding on the bearing and the pinion gear, so we want to remove those. Again, we'll do the same thing we did before. We're going to put those two on the table to make sure they're the same screws. If they're not, we're going to try and notice where they are. It's actually the screw head that's holding this. A better picture. The screw head is actually acting as the clamp here. And then with any luck, we should just be able to pull this right out. And we were, again, fortunate. Chris tells me that I'm on a winning streak here. Most of the reels he's buying are a little bit older. They're in metal cases. And from time to time, it's not easy to get that out. Okay, this was recently serviced. You can see the blue grease is in there again. I'm just going to take that blue grease out. I'm going to clean that up. And then this spring should be should be a whole lot more tense than that. I'm thinking that this spring on his dog is not set right. So I'm going to put this into the case for a moment. I'm going to come back under here and just check this spring, because this should be firing better than it is. Springs are always interesting in how they're set. It may be that whoever serviced this reel had the dog off and didn't set this spring properly. Yeah, okay, so this is not wrapped properly here. So pull that spring up. So this spring has a catch lever that's going to go around the arm of the bail, like that. And then we got to put tension on the spring, which means that wherever that is, it's got to pull it. And this one usually rides. Okay, so we're going to anchor the tail on this side of that spring. That leaves that U-shaped one on this side. And then it's kind of a little, you got a hook kind of on the tip. You got to kind of play with it because you got to clear that little post there. Square it up, set it down. And that should be providing a whole lot more spring. There you go. That's doing what it should be doing now. So that spring was misinstalled. That's probably what caused the anti-reverse issue. So my guess, just looking at this now, is that somebody probably went in, serviced the reel, probably took this off. And chances are when they took this off, they didn't know that that's the way that the spring loaded. And having loaded it that way, ran into trouble. Okay, with that set now, let's go ahead and rebuild the reel. So we're going to take the pinion gear and we're going to grease that up again. So this is a good time to tell you, if you like the art of reel repair, if you like watching how it's done, if you like the mechanics of fishing reels and you want to learn a little bit about how they're made and how they come together, sort of like that spring that we just did, well, then I would invite you to subscribe to my channel, because I'm working on all kinds of fishing reels, and when I work on those reels, I try to take the time to explain a little bit about them, like that anti-reverse spring there. And as I'm doing that, it's a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about the fishing reels themselves, what makes them work, and how they come together, and how to service them. And particularly if you own one, well, you probably see the one that you own being worked on, and that's always a good indication of the methods that you would use to do fishing reel repair. If you subscribe, please hit the notification button. That way you'll see all of the reels that I'm working on, all kinds, spinners and bait casters and ocean reels and the like. Antique reels from time to time. We get them all in here. And you're essentially looking over my shoulder in my shop as I do the customer services of these reels. So I invite you to subscribe, and if you do, please hit those notifications. All right, once you finish tightening those screws, go ahead and put your eccentric on. And then remember, you have that little downside hook that belongs in here. You want to test it at this point. It's a good idea. Go ahead and put your router on, give it a spin, and make sure that as you hit it, you lock in on the reverse, which is what it's doing. All right, it's catching. You have movement because it's got a little bit of movement between those ridges. All right, with that's back on, you can go ahead now and actually put the rotor back on. And then we can go down and we can assemble a case from below. So we're going to take the rotor nut first. I'll tighten it by hand as much as I can. I'm going to use that tool. You can use a straight 12mm wrench here because the lip is short, but that tool is convenient. Okay, we've got a oscillation gear. We're going to put some grease on. You want to grease the back side the teeth and the front side, and then we can lay that in the case like this. When you lay it in the case, you want to make sure that the stud is on the bottom side pointing down. Next up then, you take your oscillation block, or crosswind block. It's called a couple of different names. Take that ridge or that indentation and seat it over that stud below. We can take our main gear. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to grease this up. You want it to check for all the teeth, make sure that there's symmetry in those teeth, both on the front and the back side. Okay, seat that in. We're going to take our axle shaft and clean the axle shaft off. And when we do, just a light coating of grease. Don't put a lot on there because you'll squeeze it out as it comes through the top part of the assembly here. Line that up with your crosswind block. It's got to go in square, flat side goes to the front. And then when you do that, make sure that you have the holes aligned here. Then you want to take those two small screws. Yep, those are the ones I always have problems with. And I'm going to put a little dab of grease onto the end of my screwdriver just to kind of act as a temporary glue for that screw. And try and hold it in and get started that way. Me and small screws don't agree all the time. You can use a micro screwdriver on this. It's got a very small top hole there. So go ahead and use a micro screwdriver if your Phillips head isn't holding it. Let's see if we can get one more shot out of that grease on the tip there. We didn't. I guess we'll have to go back and re-grease. That's okay. I'll just get that in this hole here. And then we'll be able to close up the case and we'll give it a try and we'll see what's going on here. Alright, sometimes there's a small washer that is kind of a spacer. I'm not seeing it on this, I just see the bushing. You don't have to oil or grease bushings, they're just metal pieces. Go ahead and put the cover back on. Remembering that all 4 screws are the same, we can go ahead and just put them in random holes. Key is to get one in each hole. Doesn't matter too much about which one came out of which hole. Guess if you really wanted to, you can pay closer attention and number them and the like. I thank Henry Ford for interchangeable parts. All right. Down. I like to do it in the next pattern, kind of keep equal tension on the sides of it. So I'll go to the bottom here, and I'll take this bottom one over here, and then we'll go back up top on the right hand side. So this one belongs to Delmar. He sent me in a couple of reels. If you have a reel that needs to be serviced or repaired and you're interested in having me do that, please contact me by email on the business card that follows. That'll give you the information you need to send the reel in to me. Alright, this is a star retention ring. I'm going to take that out. We're going to check the drag washers inside. These look to be plastic washers. They're HT100 washers, even better. So HT100s can go in dry or they can go in with the dry grease in them. I'm just trying to figure out what we have here. So we have a base ring and we have the HT100. This is the way they're coming out now. Then you're going to want to put the first of the eared washers facing downward. The next washer. Round one. The last washer. That one was sitting on top for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. Then the metal washer goes last. And then we can put this back in. There's a ridge that it rides in. This is a retention clip. Hold it. It can spring. generally speaking, it will spring if you're not careful. And I'm just checking to make sure we're in. Okay, spool goes on next. Tension adjuster. Let's lock this down, make sure that we have a tight drag. We do. Take the handle next. Now, silly me, I should have paid attention. I can go back to the pictures. I think that the handle was on the other side. Always good to notice. I'll go back after the video is complete, and if it's being installed on the wrong side, I'll make sure to switch it over before I return the reel. If you have a screw like this, make sure that you're matching the screwdriver to the slot in the screw. Don't go too small. That can butterfly the slot, and then you won't be able to grab it the next time you go to service the reel. All right, side plate cap goes on now. Time for a test. Here we have a reverse. We have the reverse. That was the important one. Now let's give it the override. Back pedal the reel. And then let's go full again. Okay. So, looked like we had a spring that was installed improperly in the anti-reverse. Everything else looked nice and clean. We took care to take the reel off, disassemble everything, inspect all of the parts, clean the old grease, re-oil, and get this one back in service again. So that's the Penn Powergraph 4000. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it, and please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance to Have a great day.